Hello, everyone. Welcome to Comic Sans, the podcast about comics for those who are sans knowledge. I'm Yan. I like comics, and with me, as always, is
Nat, who is beginning to like comics. I think that's part of this journey, that's part of this story. And maybe one day I will fully like it. But with us today is someone else who I think would say they like comics.
With us today is ML Kejera, a Gambian writer currently based in Illinois. His fiction has been shortlisted for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, and he's been awarded a Miles Morland Writing Scholarship. He has work published or forthcoming in The Nation, LA Review of Books Quarterly, The Comics Journal, Wasafiri, and the Cafe Iril. Aside from fiction and journalism, ML is a comics critic. This is why we're so excited to have him here today.
I'm scared.
He used to review comics for the AV Club. He also wrote and edited for the Eisner-winning Journal of Comics Criticism, PanelxPanel. ML, I don't know if you know this, but I've actually had 2 pieces in PanelxPanel.
I actually do think I know this. I don't think I ever edited them, but I think I've read them for sure, actually.
I've had the pleasure of meeting ML face-to-face in Illinois, where I think on one evening was quite a bender.
We met through a mutual friend of ours,
Yes.
very, very inebriated, the both of us, I think, and I got talking to Yan, and it was great because A, he talks a lot, and B, which is great because he often has very interesting things to say. I found, like, within a few minutes of talking to him, I was like, oh, I really enjoy talking to you.
That's why he has a podcast.
Exactly.
I will never forget this conversation that ML and I had. Within like 5 minutes of meeting each other, we were discussing, hey, which countries have the word "the" in the title?
You know?
Okay. I'm from one of the few countries that does, actually. You immediately become the annoying person when you correct someone over it. But it's like, imagine how annoying I find it being like hearing my country's name being, just misspoken. Like,
Yeah, it's not some Gambia. It's not a Gambia. It's the Gambia. Let's give it the respect it deserves.
right?
Yeah,
Like the average person in the world doesn't know enough about Africa. There could be 3 Gambias. You don't know.
it's true. There are 3 countries in Africa with the word Congo in it.
Right?
But is there the Congo?
There is not a country called the Congo. I don't think so. Ambitious effort, Nat. Welcome to Comic Sans, ML. We're delighted to have you.
Glad to be here.
Nat, what's a piece of media you've been enjoying lately?
Something I've been listening to recently is an album from a band called Turnstile, a band that I enjoy a lot, and their second album just came out. It's called Never Enough. And if anyone out there has never heard of Turnstile, I highly recommend it. They are, in theory, in genre, a hardcore band, and their music is very much hardcore. But as someone who does not consider themselves someone part of the hardcore community, I just think Turnstile are so unique because they're kind of like this perfect gateway drug into that world. You have like the aggressive guitar riffs and the punchy drums, but then you also have these like ethereal, dreamy synths, and it's all held together by this vocalist, Brandon Yates, who has this like amazing, effortless voice that can just carry over all these different styles of music. Couldn't recommend them enough. Never Enough by Turnstile. Check it out.
Wow, that was a real snippet of Turnstile Sans. Thanks, Nat.
Yeah.
ML, what have you been enjoying?
I just finished reading this really great Brazilian book. It's the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. But it's by this brilliant Brazilian author called Machado de Assis. And as the title suggests, it's the memoirs of a dead man. So he's writing it from the perspective of already being dead. It's a pretty typical story of, starts off a bit of a Bildungsroman, like this is a young man, his life. But what's fascinating about it is the form of the novel. It's frankly doing postmodernist things in the late 19th century. It's a one paragraph that's just word after word, a list of things, say, like recounting the father's funeral or something. And so it's like hearse, horse, weeping, widow. And that's the entire chapter, just breaking convention. There's stuff that's frankly just stream of consciousness type things that you don't really see from literature of that period. I'm still just blown away by that. Again, anytime you look into the past hard enough, especially with literature, you're just like, oh, I guess you can't really say modernism or even postmodernism are a thing of the 20th century, can you?
No. Oh, that's great. I love that. You know, it's like people say that thing like if you give a this is totally reducing everything you just said, but if you give a caveman a flaming hot Cheeto, he'll die. I don't think that's true. I think he's gonna be
No,
like, this
no.
kind of tastes like Sabretooth.
Exactly. No, like Greg will show you some recipes that will blow your mind. Like
That's what I'm saying.
Is that a thing just people just say if you give a caveman a Cheeto?
A flaming
that
hot
like
Cheeto. Flaming hot Cheeto.
specifically a flaming hot Cheeto, yeah. Or like the thing that people love to say is that, oh, a Victorian child
Yes.
with a sniff of modern anything would be that. It's like, no, man, like did you see the conditions they were going through? Like half the world was trying to kill them, right? And then they had to clock in at work. Be serious.
No, they were hardier than us, and they were perhaps already doing things more experimental than us. Love to hear it.
Oh, most certainly.
Yan, what about you, Yan? Hit us with what you've been enjoying.
I've been playing Persona 3 Reloaded, which is
Oh, wow.
essentially a high school simulator.
This is the first game that's ever been mentioned in this section of the show.
I'm usually too ashamed to bring up that I'm a gamer because it's tough to be a gamer
Yeah.
and also be recording this podcast.
But you should be. I game occasionally. I think it's one of those things where we need some sense of shame. You see
No,
what's
absolutely.
happening.
We need some.
No, we
You-
are,
you see
we
what's
are
happened to the
responsible
community
for
now.
terrible things.
Thank you, right?
Like, I do think a lot of modern ails could be traced to like someone logging onto Counter-Strike for the first time.
No, genuinely, right?
Onto something that we have no shame liking. Let's talk about
Well,
comic books.
Speak for yourself.
You have shame. You don't even like them, so you can't even have shame. You should be ashamed you don't love them. That's what's.
Yeah,
that's
so
what's up.
it's shame that surrounds the topic.
I'm hoping that this look into the French comics world will help you see that there is a part of the world that considers comics serious art. Well, they do have some stigma towards it, but it's nothing like it is in the US, where you can even say, oh, this is stuff for kids, or why are you reading that? Like, no, they call it the ninth art there. After literature, prose, theater, like sculpture and all that kind of stuff, they call it like the ninth art as a fun name. And Mœbius is kind of part of that reason.
I'm pumped. Okay, so ML has already said who we've read today, which is Mœbius. So ML picked it. Nat and I read it. We're excited to talk about it. But before we get into it, ML, tell us a little bit more about Mœbius. Tell us why you chose this work.
Mœbius is actually the pen name of the French illustrator and cartoonist Jean Giraud. I would consider, possibly the most famous French comics person, not writer, not illustrator, just person entirely, who is of that generation that cemented French comics as a serious art, right? When I'm trying to say that generation, I mean he was born in 1938.
Whoa.
Yeah. He died in 2012, right? And a way you can know how serious French comics are is that government officials were at his funeral as like cultural representatives. That's how serious this was. Because part of it is that, especially after World War II, the French comics industry got really nationalized, actually. The French comics industry has mostly been part of the generally Franco-Belgian comics because both are Francophone countries, and thus it makes sense for the industry to be so close. But for example, a lot of American comics were coming in and jeopardizing French comic sales. So they didn't outright ban American comics, but they limited their sales, like on a national level.
Oh.
Yeah, this kind of suppression happened. Fascinatingly, have you guys talked about Seduction of the Innocent yet?
No, I don't think so.
You know the Comics Code Authority,
Yes,
right?
of course. I was wondering if that's the mentality, right? Yeah.
I think, was it Frederick Wertham, I think his name was, who he wrote this book called Seduction of the Innocent, which basically castigated the American comics industry as corrupting youth. I think Wertham was working right in the Silver Age, so like 1950s, right after the war, where people got lost interest in like war stories and romance stories, and we're like, we just want to read about superheroes, right?
Mm.
So Frederick Wertham would be saying things like, Batman and Robin, that's grooming. And it's like,
Oh. Oh,
Feels
dear.
like, feels like we cycled all the way back around the Wortham's world.
yeah. When the French industry was putting the clamps down on American comics, messing with their sales, that's an argument they used.
Right.
Oh.
And it was weird because it was a mix of like conservative Catholics in France and the communists who supported French industry. There's lots of unions and like
It's
supported
like one of
French.
those like Venn diagrams, and
I
then in
love
the
that.
middle
Yeah.
it's like Batman groomed
Yeah.
Robin.
Exactly.
People who think
So, yeah.
Batman groomed Robin.
Yeah.
French communists.
Yeah. During World War II, because France was under German rule with the Vichy regime, right? You're not going to get American comics coming in. So a lot of the times people will be like, hey, I want to know what's happening next with Batman. And then all of a sudden you have not translated Batman comics, but Batman comics originally written in French by whoever is around to do so.
I love that. It's like
Yeah.
it's like your cousin
Yeah.
on the playground. You won't believe what
Yeah.
happened to Bruce this week.
No, but genuinely, it gets like
To
lots
Bruce.
Yeah.
of
Thanks, Nat.
Monsieur Wayne, yeah.
Monsieur
Monsieur
Wayne.
Bruce. Monsieur Wayne.
So a lot of French comics undergo this. A lot of like American comics coming in undergo this little routine. As a result of all this, where they're trying to essentially nationalize French comics, they decide, the French government especially around the 60s, decides we're just going to take this more seriously because it helps boost France's image, right? France was still very much a colonial empire at the time. My mother grew up reading French comics. That's how much they were pushed. And she was raised in Senegal. That's how much they were pushed to the outside world.
So it's a real cultural export, like a proof of like cultural supremacy almost, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
It literally, quite literally that. And for example, with my mother, one of the big pushes for that was actually by Jean Giraud. Like he himself, his politics are very much on the left. He's familiar with like comics about Mao Zedong. He definitely read those. He was a big participant in at least the arts part in terms of the almost near French Revolution of May 1968, where the entire country almost genuinely, the president at the time was like, yo, I thought we were going to lose control entirely and leave it to the communists, the leftists. But because just this, the same way like Stalin used Mikhail Bulgakov's work, just because this is a good Russian export, the same way that the French government at the time used comics. And one of those was what Mœbius, as Jean Giraud, is more famous for in France itself, the Western comic, like Western meaning cowboys and all that. The Western comic Blueberry, which is about Mike S. Blueberry. Yeah, have you ever heard of this?
Well, we will be talking about it a little bit later during the after show, but I had not heard of it before.
For my mother has never heard of Mœbius, right? But she knows who Blueberry is. She knows who Jean Giraud is.
Wow.
Because that was what was pushed by France at the time. But it's also just, to this day, in France, he's more known for the Blueberry stuff. Like there have been numerous updates to Blueberry work after Mœbius died. It was actually published in 1963 first, which for our comics heads, that's the same year Amazing Spider-Man came out, right?
Ah.
Exactly. And a thing I could never figure out was like, why is this so big? And it's like, oh yeah, the 60s are also when all the spaghetti westerns were coming out. Blueberry was just coasting off of that in terms of popularity. And it was as big in the French-speaking world as anything by Marvel, by like Spider-Man, Superman. Even during the first big comic book movies pushes in the 2000s?
Yeah.
There was also a Blueberry movie in 2004.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So what we read for this is Arzach. Or I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Not because it's in French, but because it's spelled differently every time.
To the listener, as Yan mentioned, we did read Blueberry as well, but we're going to save that conversation for the after show, which If you're new here, is something new that we're trying out, where we keep the conversation going with our fantastic guests like ML, and we've had Molly Mendoza and we've had Ren Galeno on this after show as well, and we take a deep dive into both their craft if they're writers or just other things adjacent to comics, and we think you'll really like it if you are a comics head or a Sans head. It's exclusive to our Patreon subscribers, and if you become a friend of Comic Sans or a friend of Anda's Productions on Patreon, you will get access to that very exciting conversation about Blueberry, the comic that ML's mother read. So just putting a pin in that, and then back to the conversation about Arzach. Sorry.
No, that was a great plug. I thought you were gonna like plug for like blueberry muffins or something. I was like, oh, you have a side hustle.
Yeah. Also, if you subscribe and become a friend of Comic Sans, we will personally send you a blueberry muffin.
Nat will personally send it to you, and if he does not do it, if it does not happen, it's because he did not do it. Okay, tell us where does Arzach sit in the career trajectory of Mœbius? Right? Is he a superstar by the time this comes out? Is this part of the star making?
She's already very famous for doing mainstream French comics in the 70s when he starts reading stuff like R. Crumb, like that kind of more introspective work. And this is after 68 again, when France had a huge protest, again, almost a near revolution. And he starts wanting more experimentation in his work. So he develops the Mœbius persona. In fact, the early Mœbius work is very Crumb-like, of just an extremely horny man, just making you kind of uncomfortable. But which is,
I feel like remnants of that are in this.
Okay, yeah. He's like, Mœbius goes through a wild journey in life. He kind of ends up in a space religion cult, but one constant with the man stays horny.
do we know why he took on an alias?
So it's formal experimentation, but was there also like something political behind it, or was there?
Not necessarily. He just wanted, because he was so famous for Blueberry, like that's all he was working on at various points. And he just wanted to do something else. Because based off what you've seen of Blueberry, it's just so much more rigid than the things he was allowed to do.
Yeah.
His co-author for Blueberry is Jean Chalier, who is a very old school type of French comics person. And they had a very respectful relationship with each other. They were openly saying things like, oh yeah, no, Jean Chalier would just be like, yeah, I don't really get this Mœbius stuff. I don't get it. Let's just stick to the usual comics. So the first stuff, as I said, was based off like our Crumb. It was mostly done in black and white. A lot of this, but then we get the things that start being published in this French comics magazine that was revolutionary for the time, called, in French, it's called Metal, heavy metal.
Oh.
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
You should see, yeah. I know.
the pieces are coming together. Okay.
Exactly. For those who don't know, Metal was this just wildly radical French comics magazine where a bunch of famous comics people in France of Mœbius' generation, who were very tired of working with the old school generation of Franco-Belgian comics, who were doing things like Tintin, like Tintin, sorry.
No. We're all for that authentic pronunciation. Tintin.
And Spirou, and like Asterix and Obelix and all that kind of stuff, where they'd grown up reading them, but like they just wanted to do more experimental stuff, especially because the Americans were doing more experimental stuff earlier than them. And what I find fascinating with Mœbius is that he's actually an artist where comics are a blend of word, picture, blah, blah, blah. But the apotheosis of his work is always just the image, no words. He said so himself, and partially this is because growing up, when he had access to American comics, a lot of the time they were in English, which he didn't understand at the time, so he would just read the pictures. And I think that all goes into how we get something like Arzach, getting at the heart of what a comic is, which, if we follow Will Eisner's definition, is just a sequential image, right? Forget the words, that's part of a different medium. That's literature as we properly think about it, but now we're just reading images as they come to us, right? So that's how Arzach comes. And Arzach it's like in the middle of the Mœbius career arc, not in part of the Jean Giraud arc, where he was already a big famous superstar, kept drawing Blueberry for most of his life, actually. That's what made most of the money, other than all the other Hollywood stuff and things like that.
Was anyone like, this is too much? Like, was anyone like, bring the words back? Oh, is he already so far in his like wordless era that everyone's like, keep it going, buddy?
Okay, so everyone who was of his generation loved it immediately, right? I would say it's probably one of the most influential comic books to ever exist, ever. If you've ever watched a Hayao Miyazaki film,
Yeah,
I haven't seen it in a while, but something like Nausicaa,
absolutely.
Miyazaki himself admits to, I read Mœbius at the time. I read Arzach, and it's been influential on people like Mike Mignola.
Mignola, yeah. Hellboy, who we read in season
Yeah,
1.
we've read that. Yeah.
Exactly. And you can probably see a little of the influence there. His entire work is just very influential on anything that's speculative. So some of the droids you see in Star Wars, those are directly from Mœbius's pages. 100% you can that's just, okay, Mœbius came up with that first. Blade Runner, I'm not even kidding. Futuristic Detective, that's just another Mœbius story, The Long Tomorrow. Do we know who Alejandro Jodorowsky is here?
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
do not.
Okay.
Please
Yan
enlighten
does,
me.
but I think you don't like his work.
No. It's we'll get into that.
Alejandro Jodorowsky is this mostly Mexican-based director primarily, right? And he made a bunch of films. And at one point, he was going to make a Dune adaptation that didn't work out, but they went through so much of the pre-production already, storyboarding everything, making quite a few costumes and things. And he hired Mœbius. And that's what brought Mœbius into the American film industry. Yeah, and as a result, he ended up, you see a lot of his influence in Star Wars. You see a lot of his influence in Tron. As I said, Blade Runner. I think he was just directly consulted for a film like The Fifth Element. Because it's just been a few decades since he was in his prime. Some younger comics readers may not know about him entirely, but it's like, almost every pop culture thing you like has some influence of Mœbius going on there.
ML, could you just tell the listeners what exactly you had us read from Arzach so they're aware of it?
I'll start off with just how it was published first. It was first published in Heavy Metal as 4 short stories. And the best way I can summarize it is, to make it simple, is it's a guy flying around.
Yeah. That was my experience with it too.
Well, except for one of them, except for the third one, there was no flying around in that one.
If you look carefully there, that entire thing is about fixing the thing he flies around.
Yeah, I know.
That was not even I don't think those first short stories were the first appearance of the Arzach. It was just something he had in his mind for a long time, which kind of gets to my approach to the entire narrative, where I think this is just Mœbius putting a recurring dream of his down on the sequential comics page, right?
Is this an ML theory?
Yes, and it's also based off things that he said.
Right, okay.
It's an ML theory with substantiation.
Which is why, ML, you asked us to keep a dream journal,
Yeah.
right? And we're going to get into that as well. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's do what we usually do, ML. So if you're familiar, typically Yan would ask me to describe what I read in 5 words. But because both of us are sitting on the sands half today, we're going to split these 5 words amongst ourselves to describe these 4 short stories that we read. Yan, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna say smooth.
You want to substantiate, elaborate? No? Because I don't get smooth, but
I'll
okay,
explain
sure.
later.
Okay.
I see that. I can see why you would say smooth.
Yeah.
Okay, the word I'm going to bring to the table is barren.
Okay.
Barren.
Okay. I'm gonna say impulsive.
My second word will be carnal.
Yes.
That's a great word, Nat. That's a great word.
Yeah, I thought about that one.
Yeah, that kind of nails it. I don't know. It's like fantastical feels so bland, you know?
It fits, I think.
It fits. Well, I'll say fantastical. We'll all be a little disappointed in me, and that we'll just move on from there.
Yeah, we'll all pretend carnal was the last word.
I'm pretending Connell was the last word.
Can I go back to a question Yan had? Why is Arzach spelled differently every single time?
Okay, so have you ever tried reading in a dream?
Yes.
Right.
Do the words ever stay consistent in the dream?
No.
That's why.
I've had so many dreams where I'm trying to order from a menu, and every time I look back at the menu, it's different.
That's why. That's exactly it. This is just a man putting his dreams down on the sequential page. That's
For the listener, sorry, just to, if you haven't read it, sometimes it's spelled Harzac. That's the first time we see it. Next page, Arzach. And then later on, Harzak. It's just constantly changing.
And just for the listener, that's for like the excerpt we read. The book itself is Arzach.
which is fascinating to me because I think it just how it works because it's such a surreal, literally a very surreal piece of work. And I'll get into why I say literally surreal in a bit. I remember it as Arzach, like L apostrophe, because the first time I read this, I was maybe 15, 14. And I swear to God, when I was reading the page, it was L apostrophe Arzach. And like, it's not called that when Francophone people talk about the book, they don't call it Arzach. That's just the effect Arzach has on your memory.
I think that's a neat little trick that Mœbius pulled on you specifically.
Yeah.
It's like one copy is gonna say Arzach, and that's gonna really fuck with their head for many years. Tell us a little bit more about surreal. Why is this literally surreal?
I think generally speaking, most people, when they hear the word surrealism, they think of Salvador Dali and his films and, well, no, his paintings. No one knows he did films.
I didn't know he did films.
Yeah. So they mostly think of his paintings, the melting clocks and all that, right? But before Dali, it was a movement as a response to World War I and the destruction that had caused and how many Europeans especially were feeling that all their culture had led them to the First World War. And so they had to re-examine their culture. They started even distrusting their perception of reality, right? So there are many ways of reacting to this. One way was the surrealism, which is a rejection of reality as you experience it. So in André Breton's, I believe, 1924 or 1929 Surrealist Manifesto, he talks about how it's the manifestation of dreams. That many of them genuinely believed that the unconscious was a truer version of reality than what our senses actually perceive, right? So they came up with many surrealist techniques where you're just letting your subconscious create work. One of them is automatic writing, where you just let the pen do whatever it wants to do as you come up with words. It's not really a living art movement as such, because a lot of the surrealists, it was very much a 20th century thing, but it has variations in terms of political survival, I think, because not just with the early surrealists who almost to a man were all communists of some sort, but they did also have surrealist Africans, like someone like Aimé Césaire, where for them, the reality they were rejecting was the legacy of slavery, the legacy of colonialism against Africa. Because when you think of Salvador Dali and like what surrealism is conceived of as like wacky stuff, you're like, what does this have to do with politics? And it's like, well, what is a stronger understanding of the dream than just an outright rejection of your political reality? That's what surrealism is. And that kind of politics, it's not always directly referenced in Mœbius's work. Like Arzach, for example, is hard to describe politically, but a lot of his other work is just directly political. Like he's got stuff against anti-Arab violence in France, stuff like white terror, white nightmare. That's how surrealism is reflected to Mœbius's work. And it was always putting the dream on the page was always something he was going for when he was talking about comics.
I love the way you just characterized surrealism, ML, and I think that's like a big part of the reason why I chose the word smooth.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it does actually feel like when you're reading it, it does feel like there's something quite like use the automatic writing as an exercise. The way it moves from panel to panel, it's very seamless. You're really just following the visual logic of it, even if there may not be like a logic that we can tap into. There is something smooth and continuous about the motion of how we move through Arzach's journey as he's flying around the world, seeing crazy things. It's very just much like, oh, and then what next? Right? So like, for example, in this first story, right, Arzach is flying around a giant building. Oh, there's another side to this other building. There's a window.
I think we need to clarify what he's flying around on. I think
you
we
do
not
it.
mentioned.
You tell us what it is then.
I think the exact words that ML gave us in like his little prompt to us. What was it, ML? Like a semi-robotic pterodactyl. Was that it?
Close. It's I think he calls it a like
biometallic pterosaur.
Yeah, biometallic pterosaur. Exactly.
Which crazy.
Which again is just what, you know, like what is,
as you do, you know, as you do,
as one does, you know, like the same way you take the car for a tune-up. Oh, gotta go tune up my biometallic pterosaur.
But yes, okay, Yan, back to you. So he's flying around.
He's flying around a mountain. He's looking very stern. There's another shadowy side of the mountain. He goes around it. He looks through the window. What does he see?
Boobies.
What did we say about Mœbius? This man's
He's
horned up.
horny, man.
He's always horny.
And the rest of this short story is entirely about Arzach trying to see the boobs again.
Okay, so
singular logic makes a lot of sense within the comic.
Compelled by the boobs, he goes and goes to basically kidnap this creature he kidnaps, or this man. Do y'all interpret it as like the woman's
lover,
guardian,
keeper?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay, isn't that fascinating though? Because you immediately have to say, do you interpret it as such, right?
Yeah, I mean,
hey, do you interpret this as a biometallic pterosaur?
Yeah. Or is Arzach like a horrible character that's essentially trying to kidnap a woman until he sees her? Because what happens at the end when he sees her face?
This is the heights of dream logic, right? Which is, I said that thing about, I'm trying to order a burger. I look at the back at the menu. It's a sushi place. Arzach gets back to the woman. She turns around and she's got, what is this face? What is?
I mean, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Let's put that out there first. You know,
I think that's going to take a very specific eye to find this beautiful.
Mœbius might have been into some very freaky stuff. We don't know.
That's true. I don't think we need to say might have been. I think he almost definitely was.
Sorry, Mœbius. Don't mean to king shame you.
Yeah.
He lassos the Guardian up. He soars away. All these people are watching. And then he brings him to a giant carcass and then loops it around basically his armpit and his shoulder and just forces the guy to dangle there.
And then he returns to the building.
Yep.
Goes into the building to look for the boobs. And then face reveal. He basically got catfished, I guess.
And then he soars away. And then we see and I want to know what does everyone interpret the keeper doing as he's dangling?
I think he's pointing at his head.
But what does that mean?
To me, he's the mid-motion of like circling his head of being like, this shit crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, I do see the motion lines around his head now. I missed that. I missed that at the start.
Exactly. They're that.
Yeah, and did you notice if you go back a couple pages, when he leaves the guy dangling from the carcass, he looks back and it looks like he's flipping him off. But he's doing something that I thought was like a similar motion as he looks back at the dangling man. Do you see it?
Oh, you're right. He is pointing. Okay, he's kind of pointing, but it kind of looks like, hey, buddy, I'm about to go. You know what?
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, I thought the guy was mocking him or something, like repeating his motion.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes sense. ML, do you have a favorite of one of these shorts?
Probably the third one. That's the one where a man is driving through the desert in some kind of vehicle. I would describe it as inside the pterosaur.
That's what I thought, but I yeah.
Or it could be like a remote thing, right? Like it could be
like a drone.
No, yeah, my interpretation was it's a remote site.
Oh,
yeah,
okay. Interesting. But either way, this is how we fix the pterosaur, which again is biometallic. So this man is driving through a desert or whatever that's somewhere either within or outside of the pterosaur itself. He fights off some people and then goes to a place and then makes some fixes on machines, and then we see a screen light up, and then we see Arzach on his pterosaur flying away, right?
Yep.
What do you notice about the way the panels of that story are versus the panels in the other stories? Just in terms of the panels themselves.
Yeah.
How are they drawn?
In this one, it's all just horizontal,
very boxy.
Three.
Yeah. But literally straight lines, right?
Yeah.
Every other Arzach story, they're wavy. And then do you know the page where the screen is, where the screen shows us
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is going on? What describe the screen?
I'm gonna pass out right now, everyone. This is insane.
Wait, I don't get it. Wait, I don't get it.
Nat, it's curvy because it's a panel.
Yeah, and it's
Nat, do you understand?
No.
The edges of the screen are curved, like in every
Oh,
other
oh.
Arzach panel.
I see.
I'm gonna lose my mind.
mind.
I'm gonna lose my mind.
and for me, because a lot of his other work, like Blueberry, the panels are all straight line drawn, just definitely with a ruler. Whereas a lot of the Arzach panels and the Mœbius work, some of them when it's more dreamy, they are wavy. And I think that's essentially what dreams. It's like capturing the texture of dreams. Now, I don't think many people would say the texture of dreams, if you had to represent that with a type of line, would be a straight line. It's like it's wavy. You're actually, there's very little consistency in dreams. It's always a thing of the consistency is actually your memory creating narrative between the images you're given in dreams. Now, do we know of a medium where you have to come up with meaning of between images yourself? There's there. Like Dora the Explorer, like, can you guys figure it out?
I know.
Dora looking at the screen is, can you guys say semiotics?
We got to get to the second, which if I was a betting man, I would say was Yen's favorite.
Yeah, no, I do love this. The second did do something for me.
The reason I say that is for no particularly deep reason other than the fact that there is a giant monkey. Okay, Yen, do you want to have the honors of taking us through number 2?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Arzach somehow has secured a second biometallic pterosaur who is carrying his goods, and they're flying over sort of what looks like a sea of tendrils. And the mule of the pterosaurs gets caught in the tentacles and gets swallowed in, and Arzach looks really annoyed. So he keeps flying. Then he sees one little arch. And atop the arch is a giant red creature.
With a giant dong.
I paused to determine if it's circumcised. That was literally me pausing to like look in, and then you gave it away.
Oh, sorry. But please tell us, is it circumcised? Please tell the listener.
I believe so.
Actually, it is. Yeah, that's a clear circumcision right there.
Breaking news, everyone.
The giant monkey monster thing, circumcised.
Anyway, Arzach just kind of instantly doesn't like this guy and just leads him in this loop-de-loop and forces him off the arch and then enjoys the sunset while the creature gets swallowed up by the tendrils.
I mean, specifically, he knocks the creature off balance. He falls and he's hanging onto the arch by like his fingertips, the creature's fingertips. And then there's a shot of just like Arzach eating a sandwich or something, while you see the fingers just slipping off, and then finally in the last panel falling to its death into the carnivorous tendrils. With, might I add, that face in the middle is just haunting. So in the middle of these 4 panels in this last page, you just have a close-up of the creature's face and its like massive green eyes. This was so much fun.
Yeah, this is a really fun one. But that last page is also like, I lingered on that page for a bit because, if we're talking about, is there politics to this work? This very strange work. It does, actually, the second one does feel like there's a little bit of something there. Because the framing of all the panels, we do not sympathize with Arzach in this. At least I didn't.
No, you don't.
He's behaving like a total prick. And he's relishing in this creature's suffering. This suffering that is given the most prominent space in the last page, while we are also given Arzach very happily eating this sandwich.
Mœbius, ever since his childhood, he was fascinated by the concept of explorer. In terms of what the politics here means is, when Mœbius came up with these stories, he was saying, this is actually a very dark story. You can't really be sure he has positive intentions for the woman creature thing in the first story. All we see him, like, you don't know that he just didn't separate a perfectly fine relationship between 2 individuals just to harm her, right? And again, that's just the settler. In the French mind, the settler is just colonialism, right? And Mœbius is, again, what we see in these 3 short stories is he's a technologically advanced person flying through a wasteland, a world that has been ruined. Because in this second short story especially, the thing he hangs leaves the creature off of, that's a ruin. There's destruction around it. You are wondering, is the Arzach responsible for this? Or whatever civilization resulted in him, they caused this destruction.
Mm.
Later on in his life, and these are part of the expansion of the Arzach stuff that I don't like as much because it comes after he joined the weird space cult thing that was very big on positivism. I just think that's weird.
Uh-huh.
If you're part of a space cult, I'm sorry, I'm not like against, I'm not directly against you. That is a weird thing. That is like you can't just expect us to be like, oh yeah, that's the space cult religion. Like, no, come on, be serious.
We're gonna get a lot of angry emails
From the spacecult@gmail.com.
In the future stuff, does he like try to explain stuff more? Like what happens in the future stuff?
That's a big reason why I don't like the future stuff as much too. He worked with 2 prose writers to write a novel based off the Arzach stuff that he contributed illustrations towards. And that's like just a proper fantasy setting. And it explains too much. Like it kills Arzach for me because again, this was the apotheosis of just, this is the sequential image, right? As related to how dreams are just sequential images. And then if you add a bunch of words to it, you're explaining things that literally exist because you're trying not to explain something. You know what I mean? You're trying to just get the reader to draw as much meaning out of it as possible.
Before we get into the fourth one, because I want to really briefly talk about Incal, right? Which is the collaboration between Mœbius and Jodorowsky, which is the one thing by Mœbius that I've already read. So that's just like a really like considered like a seminal graphic novel, big space-faring adventure with a character very similar to Arzach, except more explicitly horny.
It's Dune. I quite literally mean when they couldn't make the Dune film, Jodorowsky and Mœbius, they loved working together. Again, possibly because they were both really into that kind of occultism, mysticism stuff.
Right.
They really liked working with each other. And as a result, they made the Incal, which is, it's just Dune. It's literally just Dune.
And this is part of the reason I didn't like the Incal was because there was just so much explaining going on. Right. Whenever I like switched my brain off and just looked at the images, I'd be like so enveloped by this, like just the visuals and the storytelling that existed, which is why it's so fascinating you say that the beginning of it is just sequential image, because sequential image, it's perfect. The text for me, for the Incal at least, when I read it that first time, it just got in the way.
Yeah. Anyone listening, if you're ever reading the Incal, I would suggest genuinely skip a lot of the words. Jodorowsky even Jodorowsky, again, primarily a director. A lot of his films, there's talking, but the images are what you're there for. I usually will not be like, oh, you can ignore the words in a comic because the medium is usually a beautiful blend of the two. But with Mœbius's work, genuinely, you have to remember a big part of his comics education was reading American comics that he couldn't understand, so he could only focus on the images. The images will always tell you a narrative, even if it's just your brain's preconceptions putting in 100% of the work. You're still going to get so much out of Mœbius's work just by looking at the images.
Well, speaking of explaining things, I realize I've kind of backed myself into a corner here by letting you guys take the first 3 because now I kind of have to talk about the fourth one. And I'm going to be honest, I have no idea what's happening in this one. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. And you guys might need to...
That first page, you know what's going on. You can explain that first page, Nat.
Okay.
Perfectly.
First page I can do, no problemo. First page we have Arzach literally looking into like a hole in a wall, staring at a naked woman, who, as far as we can tell, this time seems to have a more humanoid face. And then he literally does this pose.
It's an incredible expression by Mœbius. It's the realest thing he's done in the whole book.
Yeah, generally, I find it fascinating, Nat, that you said you have difficulty explaining what this fourth one is about, because a lot of it is just a rehash of the first one. Because
oh, really?
I don't necessarily think this is a reoccurring dream or anything, but him more saying if you have a dream that's particularly powerful or something, you keep thinking about it. And as your memory works on it, you interpret it in different ways, right?
Okay. Well, let's get into that.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so after that first page, then I'm lost. So we turn the page and then we see...
And then you're like,
and then we see Arzach like jumping off a skull. We see him talking to like what looks like a vaguely Japanese woman. I don't know. And then, we turn the next page and then it's like a 2-page spread of like him flying over like some war. I mean, to me, these
Yeah.
images are really hard to connect.
For me, it's connected somewhat to the first story because just in terms of the reoccurring dream or remembering the dream in different ways of just starting off vaguely with a connection with some female figure, right?
Mm.
And then you end up with a representation of bestiality, of violence. So you start off with the erotic and you end up with violence. And that's what this fourth one is to me.
The colonial conquest, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like, again, the expanded work, they go into like the larger universe of Mœbius, and you find out that this is about that one of these pages is depicting a war and the Arzach's relationship to that. And he's like he's not a savior character, but he's like the helper of a character that could be a savior character. To me, it's just not that interesting. I just focus on what the images mean, what confusion they cause. And then what I find fascinating is you have a page he has a cube, and then he's surrounded by, in panels, these are weird versions of panels, where we actually get the only dialogue in these four stories where it just says Arzach. Again, spelled completely different. If we think about when these dreams came to Mœbius, like I genuinely believe he dreamed of Arzach at some point. He must have heard the word Arzach, you know? And so we get one bit of dialogue and it just kept repeating in his mind.
We just glossed over one page, which is a full page spread of Arzach sitting naked.
He's got his boots on.
Oh, sorry. And his headdress.
And his headdress.
And Yan, do you want to just check whether he's circumcised real quick?
I'll let you do it. I'll
Oh,
give you
really?
the honors.
Okay, I'm zooming in. Okay, he's circumcised, everyone.
Thank you. And this is one of the strange. I mean, this is like, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this. So I've read some French comics here and there, and this is part of the thing that did stump me about the Incal was the presentation of the female body. The thing I get stuck on, like, okay, he's perhaps replicating a colonial gaze, right, or a misogynist gaze. At what point is that also misogynist? I don't think there's a clear answer to this question, but it is something that I feel like I stumble into way more in European comics than I do in American comics. And it happens a lot in Japanese comics, which I think in the Japanese comics, it is actually just, there isn't some sort of thoughtful, especially for the teenage boys.
There's no nuance there. It's just misogyny.
It's just misogyny, right? So this sits in this kind of in-between space that's like, I don't really know how to parse it. Nat, did you have any responses when you were going through this? And you were like, oh, we're watching a horny man in action.
For me, because I had no sense of the name Mœbius, I didn't know it was like an alias, you know, like it was just nothing to me. It was an empty word. So I didn't think about the writer at all as I was reading this, you know. So of course, like as I was reading it, I was like, yeah, clearly Arzach is a very lustful man. He's a very driven by a lot of carnal impulses, and you can make of that what you will. But I never extended that to Mœbius. For me, that wasn't in my contextual understanding of the work. But I guess it does then bring into question, like, to what extent is Mœbius Arzach, right? Like, you know, is this in any way autobiographical, or is this like just complete distancing?
It's a little, he did do another Arzach, like there's a story that's straight up autobiographical where it's based off of a trip his family took, I think to somewhere in the south of France. And then he draws Arzach flying over them or something like that. He did very much try to put a direct connection between the two, especially just literally saying something to the effect of Arzach is his unconscious made manifest. At some early points, it was very dark. He was like, whenever I let my unconscious go, it got very dark. And thus we see this violent world, this, I would describe, I'm not necessarily saying he's a misogynist for these images, because he does. For example, his wife helped edit some of his work. She was also in the comics industry in France. She gave him the nugget of an idea that explored female sexuality at one point, and it's a weird work. I'm not gonna lie, but it is interesting. Even something as much as that I love, like Bleach or whatever, where it's like, yo, man, this is a high schooler with like breasts that are just gigantic. Like, this is weird, man. Like, this is weird. Like, this is why I think we need a little bit of shame when talking about that. Like, yo, come on, and be serious. And I'm not trying to say all manga are like that. Like, well, adding it, like Miyazaki, Satoshi Kon, they do not do that kind of stuff usually. I know that Mœbius, through his wife also read a lot of feminist work. So he was incorporating that into it too. Like it's tied into with a lot of his approach towards anti-colonial work, or like, cause he does things about like the indigenous plight in the US, where it's like at its heart, this is still a very French person rooted in French culture, like grew up when France was just an imperial power. I don't think he can necessarily escape that perspective. He can criticize it in ways that I find fascinating, but that doesn't necessarily mean he can ever. There's going to be some discomfort for you based on the kind of reader you are, you know?
Yeah. I think that you're pointing to like just simply like a cultural difference, really, like a different cultural tradition but specifically like the naked body, right? I feel like perhaps I grew up in a more prudish literary / visual tradition. And I think there's bits of this conversation that are tied to Nat and I our talk long ago about Hergé and Tonton, right? Because we read Tonton in Tibet.
To clarify, we didn't read it in Tibet. We read Tintin in Tibet.
But that's a later part of his career, right? When he almost trying to rectify some of the mistakes he had made earlier in how he was otherizing and orientalizing, and now he wanted to humanize characters, and he doesn't totally like get it right. If there is a way to get it right, there's still flaws in it, but there's still a very earnest attempt behind it. And that's as to what you were saying about Mœbius's relationship with colonialism.
I'm going to be the party pooper and say it's about time to wrap up this conversation before we jump into the after show. Yan, did you have a final thought?
I did want to say one last thing. This conversation about Mœbius as Arzach, and specifically in relation to the third story, because this is something that's been, the gears have just been like spinning for me since ML pointed out that the screen is a panel, right?
Yeah.
So this guy drives in and he's not Arzach, right? I don't think this is Arzach.
Yeah.
Because we see Arzach on screen.
I thought it was at first.
Yeah, but it's not.
No, I just think there's something to be said there about like how one of the most pained faces we have of a human person is this mechanic in at the bottom of that page, right? When there's after he's being beaten to a pulp by all these other people, he slides in, he crawls in, and what does he see in front of him? The comic panel. And then he labors tirelessly away until the panels gets moving again. I'm imposing, it might be too simplistic a metaphor, but I think there's something
No, I see
there.
it.
Yeah.
I see it. Yeah.
Consider me turned. I'm going to go return to the Incal, ML. You've convinced me.
I don't think Jodorowsky is as brilliant as Jodorowsky believed himself to be, but a lot of his work with Mœbius, I think, is good. Just focus on the images. And definitely check out the other Mœbius work. It gets weird with the cult stuff later, but the art is always good.
I do want to, because we did this dream journal thing, I do want to spend a little time, maybe if each of us could share a little something from that, what we wrote down, just for shits and giggles. I don't know. I mean, or maybe there'll be something deeper that we discover. Who knows, you know?
Interesting. Who wants to start with their dreams?
Well, I can start since I brought us here. And I think I want to preface by saying, when we received this assignment, right, I was like, I don't dream. I always thought I don't dream. But what I realized doing this exercise is I kind of built this routine of I would wake up from a dream, and then in my like half wakened state, I'll take my phone, write out something of what I remember, and then go back to sleep. And then when I wake up, I would have no idea what I dreamt, and I have no idea what I typed. So this is what I'm going to read verbatim what I wrote, okay?
Okay.
Supposed to record Comic Sans with Molly Baz. So not Molly Mendoza, Molly Baz, who is a chef who used to work on Bon Appetit. Supposed to record Comic Sans with Molly Baz, but Nat, me, forgot to read the books. Yen suggests wearing the, quote, "my tech is bad," end quote, t-shirt that I apparently wore for another episode, which is just a regular hoodie / jacket to indicate I'm in a non-home situation and therefore my connection is wonky, so I don't talk much.
That's an excellent dream. That's an excellent dream.
That's beautiful.
My tech is bad shirt. I'm just going to share one dream I had, because this was, and I had this like 2 nights ago, and I was like, this is really funny that I've had this dream, which was that I was dog sitting for Nat's dogs.
Oh no.
But they were not the Singapore specials that they are now. They were 2 dachshunds. And Nat was on the phone with me, and he was really grumpy that they were being very nice when I was watching them, because he was like, they're never nice. They're never nice. They hate you. They hate being washed. And I'm like, nope, they're fine. And that was the dream.
That's funny. one of the ones I wrote down was I was in some club in Tunis, the club that I used to go to when I was there, like Aloko Drum, maybe. I don't even know. But there was a song of Jamaican origin, and I remember the lyrics to some degree. Do you guys ever dream about music? And it's like new music, essentially, right?
Okay, you gotta give us these lyrics. You gotta give us these dream lyrics.
I don't remember all of them, but it was basically like something bank account. Then there was a beat pause, and then you go manipulate, and I'm
dying.
So were you dreaming about financial fraud? Is that what's happening here?
I don't know.
That sounds like a banger.
I love that song. And like we were just dancing to it, like with some Jamaican music where you make a fake pistol with your hand. It's like everybody would be like manipulate, and you'd just be like, why am I dreaming this?
That's an excellent dream.
Well, on that wonderful note, typically how we end these episodes is the comics half of the show. In this case, that's UML. Will ask Yan and myself, the Sans half, a few questions. And one of the first questions being, will we keep reading or, keep exploring the world of Arzach?
Well, I don't want to say the world of Arzach because, again, most of it, other than these four, these are the best of Arzach, right? So, but will you be looking at more Mœbius work?
I personally absolutely will. I lacked the lens that ML very graciously brought to the table. And so I think I feel like I read the Incal as like a dead man. Like I really just read it. Like there was nothing going on for me. I was totally absent to a lot of what this man was doing other than the raw aesthetic appeal of it. And so I'm definitely going to return to Mœbius.
This is kind of like my first surrealist comic ever. I really enjoyed not having to read any words and just kind of go with the
picture. He has more silent comics than is just Mœbius work. They're out there. They're not what I'm going to suggest you read next, but they're out there. They're really fun. They're all just putting you in his brain, putting you yourself in your own brain. They're really cool.
Yeah, so I genuinely really enjoyed that experience, and I guess letting the brilliant, we hardly touched on it, right? But actually the art in these 4 short stories, it's incredible.
It's
like
incredible.
The colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we haven't talked about it enough, but the colors, the framing, the composition, some of the expressions. Apart from that, the one that we talked about with him doing this. But honestly,
that's
it's really
the best one. Okay, never mind.
Yeah. The whole story and the layers of the storytelling is told 100% through visuals, and I think that was such an enjoyable experience, and I would love to see more of that kind of work if that's Mœbius or other artists. But now that you've sort of segued into it, ML, let's talk about the pipeline. Pipeline, come on everyone, it's pipeline time.
ML, I hate that you said that.
No, the look on Yan's face was just like, oh, okay, we're doing this again.
Yeah, we're doing the Comic Sans pipeline.
I always hope that he forgets the song. How the pipeline works is if you like X, you're going to like Mœbius's Arzach. And that X can be anything you want. It can be a book, it can be a movie, it can be a TV show. Anything but a comic is usually what we go for.
Okay.
Nat, do you have an idea? Do you have an X?
The easy answer is like Dune, right? Yeah, or like Blade Runner, where you kind of have this like post-apocalyptic kind of like strange and very treacherous world. So I'm going to go for the low-hanging fruit. Dune, Blade Runner, that kind of world. And I'll let you guys give the more intelligent answers.
Well, I'm going to make things more difficult for you, ML, and just knock off some of the ones that we've already said, right? If you like Satoshi Kon, if you like Paprika, if you like Nausicaa, you like Spirited Away, all of that is going to be perfect. That's going to get you totally in the right headspace for Arzach. But I actually do have a different answer. It's a bit vague. If you like jazz.
Oh, that's good.
No, but truly, if you like Miles Davis, if you like John Coltrane, if you like Dizzy Gillespie, if you like jazz musicians who were improvising and riffing off of each other, right? I think this is really the comic for you because that's where it feels like it's coming from. It's just everything that happens next is a response to the phrase that's come before. But it all makes sense when it all comes together.
I'm just pulling up because I forgot the name of the film. Yeah, it's a Spanish film, The Exterminating Angel. It's by Luis Buñuel. the Mexican surrealist film. So it's basically set somewhere, I believe, in Spain, and someone invites dinner guests over, and for whatever reason, when they try to leave the house, they just can't do it. And it's never explained why they can't do it. But basically, as a thing of, if you like anything that even is popularly described as surreal, you like Arzach, you will definitely have something to work with. Especially because there's a big chance that Mœbius has influenced the thing you're enjoying.
Well, now we have the second half of the pipeline, which is if you then read Mœbius's Arzach and you liked it and you want more of that good stuff, what can people reach for? This is your wheelhouse.
I think the most fascinating thing he's ever done is a collaboration with Stan Lee, right?
Oh.
Stan Lee is initially just a writer for what became Marvel Comics. And he helped create a lot of what the modern superhero world looks like. He had a role in creating Spider-Man, for example. He was writing a lot of the Fantastic Four, for example. He's also more within the comics world. He's more known for like stealing a lot of people's ideas and presenting it as his sole creation.
Now we're gonna get the emails.
But what redeemed Stan Lee for me was how he worked with Mœbius. Because I do value Mœbius's insight so much, he was impressed by Stan Lee when they created Silver Surfer Parable, which is a re-examination of one of the core Silver Surfer stories, where he starts off as a Fantastic Four edition, where he's the Herald of Galactus. Galactus is this planet-eating, as you might imagine by the name, galactic being who needs to eat planets to survive. So Mœbius works with Stan Lee, and then they create this just beautiful work that's done in the Marvel method, where the writer just comes up with the synopsis of each page, and then the artist has fun, and then the writer plugs in words.
Oh, that's perfect
And
for
it's-
Mœbius. That's like the ideal
exactly.
scenario. That's the ideal playground.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite Marvel story I've ever read, actually, because it captures the Silver Surfer so well. In the original Fantastic Four run, I remember there's this series of panels that are very famous. It's when the Silver Surfer rejects Galactus, saying, "Then I disavow Galactus. 3 billion lives," which was the population of the time, 3 billion lives will not be lost. The Surfer stands with Earth. And I love that so much. It's just, it gets a little into the political of it, of just the power of being able to say no even to something that is presented as natural, and is to some degree as natural as just this being that needs to eat planets to survive, right? And you have Galactus, who destroys worlds in almost an industrial scale, and Mœbius is just rendering it as just the Surfer and Galactus. There's no Fantastic Four, if I'm remembering correctly. And it's more about the fight within the being of the Surfer than about actually fighting Galactus himself. It's just their life is beautiful, and we fight to support it.
Wow. We got to read this on the show.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
this
gotta
sounds like
read
an
that.
incredible
We
comic.
absolutely have to read that. Great recommendation, ML. I'm gonna go with something slightly more contemporary. Grant Morrison's Nameless, illustrated by Chris Burnham. It's a horror comic. It also operates on a dream logic. I will say that Grant Morrison's interpretation of dreams in Nameless is strictly nightmares. This is a very disturbing, freaky comic. But also a writer who, like many surrealists, believes in this collective unconscious. That's where Grant Morrison says all of the work comes from. And so, yeah, I'd recommend Nameless.
Thank you, ML, for coming on the show and for lending us your encyclopedic knowledge. And honestly, like, hearing you talk so far, I've been blown away by how much you just know.
This is professorial intellect. I love this.
Yeah.
This was amazing.
And I'm so excited that we get to do it some more for a little bit more in the Comic Sans after show, which we're going to record right after this, where we're going to be discussing briefly Blueberry by Mœbius, or rather by Jean Giraud. And so if you're interested in that and just further conversation with ML about comics and about the world of French comics in particular, feel free to check out the Andas Productions Patreon. Consider becoming a friend of Comic Sans, and we hope to see you there. ML, do you have anything?
Oh, yeah. Do you have anything you want to plug?
If you want to keep up with my work, I have a website. It's just my name, mlkejera.com.
We'll link it below.
Yeah. If you can keep up with my work there, You can read all my previous comics criticism online for the AV Club. That's still there. Some of the stuff you will have to pay for. But also, if you just email me, I'll send you whatever.
We'll include ML's email in the description as well. So if you want to reach out to him, contest him on any of his claims.
If you are a space cultist and you've got some hot thoughts,
do apologize. It's just that's come on. It's space. Come on.
Well, thanks, ML. We'll see you in the after show, and to everyone else, we'll see you on the next page.
See ya. Thanks for listening to Comic Sans. This is an Andaz Productions podcast hosted by Mal Yente and Nathaniel Ma and produced by Scott Lee Chua and Roshan Singh Sambi. This episode was audio edited by Maddie Searle, video edited by Kit Ling Leong. Our cover art and motion graphic animations are by Konechny Studio, Mariana Rudakova. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to rate and review Comic Sans. And while you're at it, follow us on social media at Comic Sans Pod. Links are in the description below.